but he loved more to read holy books. Pretty soon he was tonsured to be a monk and become a bishop. Saint John taught in Serbian Orthodox Church. Saint John never changed his watch to the daylight time. In 1934, he was bishop. What date? 1934, he was ordained to be a bishop and sent to China. And in China, of course, from Russian communists, a lot of people ran to China because China gave them a shelter there. So my mother was Russian and my father was Chinese. And we settled there, and they were not able to keep us. And Grandma Russian wrote a letter to Saint John so to adopt us. Saint John always wrote his letter by himself, every letter that he got. As I remember, he was he had a pleasant baritone voice, and when he entered the room, everybody was quiet, and he had big, nice, kind hands. But he was very strict to himself, but not the children. But if we were in our choir laughing or talking, he would see that, and later he would tell us, you have to repent, because in church is like God is there and all the angels and saints, and you should be quiet. And he made us to go and do prostrating, quite a few prostration, and ask repenting and forgiveness from God. So that was good for us to remember. Then what was, although some people thought that he was stuttered sometimes when he was nervous or something. Stuttered is that speech. But we children never noticed that. Whenever he said sermons, it was very interesting. He knew every saint day, the day, what they suffered, and it was very interesting. If we were tired through liturgy, but the sermon was like it happened just now. He was telling their lives of the saints, and we really liked that. And let's see, this was okay. Oh yeah, that's my girlfriend Zoya. She was a little girl, and her mother, she was Russian, and her mother could not keep her, and she wanted to trade her because she wanted a bottle of vodka. And so Vladika found out that, and he followed her to the bar or whatever, and he traded the little girl Zoya. Says, I'll take Zoya to orphanage, and here's your bottle. And the mother said, okay, Zoya, you can take Zoya. And he helped a lot of children, like communist ships came in 1949 to get all the Russian refugees back to Russia. And a lot of the orphans that were older, 17, 18, they wanted to go there because they built big gymnasiums, showed how it will be wonderful in a communist country, a godless country, and that, come on, gymnastics they showed and did all interesting things. And a lot of the older orphans, that was orphanage that Saint John, organized, and also for the old people, he had a place to live, And he was a good organizer, very, you know. And so some people went there because they were tempted, so that because they promised will be everything fine there. And Vladika went that day on the ship because there was two boys, Boris and Alex, and they wanted to go on that ship too to Russia because his communist was. And he took them by the hands and says, "You're too young, 9 and 10. You will stay in orphanage." And till this day, they're already, you know, our age, and they go, "Thank you to Saint John's that we never went to Russia because we got the letters. We made a, you know, secret signs. If it's very good, if they treat you, then say that. If not, your picture will be down, you know, sitting down or standing up." And they sent, they wasn't good, they didn't treat them good, they sent them to Siberia, and the picture where they were standing. So that was it for that. St. John never, there was a bed in his cell, but he did not go to sleep. It was like piled up with correspondence that he always answered everything. And we liked, he prayed all night, and when on our name's day, he would allow us to come. Well, his door was always open. It was never closed. And if you want to go to St. John, all you have to do, say, "Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me." And you listen, because the door is open like a little bit, and he's here, "Amen," then you enter. And in his cell there was like corner, it's called, Russian called red corner, all the icons there, and lampada, you know, light there, and it smells so good. Yeah, Vladika always smelled like incense, and he would, big table piled of everything, and the kids, altar boys, and of course came always to him and sat there on the floor or on a chair. And if your name's day, he would say, "You come and see me." And then he will go in his pocket, and if he had some money, he'll give you. Oh, look on his shelf, somebody had made the jam for him. He'll give you that jar of jam. And the look of his eyes, can you imagine hundreds and hundreds of orphans went through our doors. They had parents, most of them, but parents did not want a language in Chinese, so they couldn't get jobs, and it took time to learn. So they all stayed in orphanage. They had, you know, roof and school and church, so that was important. But he loved everybody, and he remembered everybody's name's day, and he was so kind, his eyes, and you know, we'll never forget it. On his name's day, we always, the kids, would sing him a little song. His hands, I sit down. A little song. When Bishop Name's Day it was, we say, "Greeting, O beloved Vladika, on your holy saint day. May God help you bear your trials." He had a lot of trials. We are grateful for your care for us poor orphans. O Vladika, your blessed image will forever be in our hearts. We remember how loving he was, and of course, he reminded us when we weren't good. Later, he would look at us with loving eyes, even if he does tell us if what we did was not good. Yes, it was very good in, you know, Japanese or bombing. I remember we had to run to grab our pill and go downstairs in a church. And there was no food because the kids, so many kids were there and hardly had any porridge or oatmeal. So the ladies of a committee, they would say, Bishop John, please don't bring no more homeless kids from the street because we have no food enough to feed them. And he would say nothing. And he will go upstairs in his cell and you can hear he kneeled and boom. And then he said he would pray a long time. And the next morning there was door and there was somebody was knocking. Some English people brought a couple bags of oats porridge. So we had food, otherwise we didn't have just boiled water, chai, and a little bit, one piece of bread that you had to put in a little crumbs and eat a little bit one by one. And that was good, better than in the street in the cold. And then we had to move, and finally he went to Washington and to the president, and he waited there a long time, and people would ask him, you have appointment? And it was Truman and war, and he says, no, I have no appointment, but I have to speak to somebody that would get to the president. Finally, he got to speak to General Voldemar, and that one led to other, and he says, I have over 5,000 Russian and other nationality refugees on the island of Philippines, Chupabao, because the Mao Zedong, Chinese president, wanted everybody, Europeans, out of the China. He says China is for China. The previous Chinese government was good, but after communists, it wasn't good. So we had to evacuate to the island and stay there for 6 months, but ended up like 2 years standing on a little island. And it was very hard for the elderly people. You live in a tent, you come to your cot, there's a snake who will be on your pillow. And we stayed in line for food. It was water, like little potato or something. And Vladika came and he always prayed and blessed the island from north to south and from the west to east. So no typhoons were gone there. So, and we right away, whenever Vladika comes to some place, or any Orthodox or Russians or Romanian, they make a church built around, no matter what it was. And there was a church already there, and it was kind of different life. But we waited for a visa. Finally, Vladika got some kind of a miracle done for us, and they opened up the visas to people to go to Australia or South America or America North. And you just have to lift your hand if you want to go to Australia or someplace, and there the ship will come and you go. But my sister kept saying, don't go to there. Our Saint John is praying for us. We got to go to America, San Francisco. So we waited a little bit longer, and the ship came, and he brought us all to San Francisco. And they were such a nice, kind people that helped him to buy the church, which is St. Stephen now. It was named on a saint, Russian saint, St. Stephen. So he named that orphanage. He brought 40 kids, orphans. I was one of them, and my sister and others. Everybody, of course, now grown up and gone, and a lot of them are in cemeteries. But Vladika always was in our hearts. I mean, he done so much for us. Yes. Yeah, and after, when we left to America, and poor little, that island was hit with such a typhoon, So all the natives suffered so much. So Vladika's prayer really helped us. It guarded us, 5,000 people, refugees from the communists. St. Egan is located now, everybody probably knows, in San Francisco. He died there and was allowed, the only person in America, San Francisco, to be buried, not in a cemetery, but in his church that he built, that cathedral of Jesus Mother of all who sorrow. And his relics, after 30 years, all the people, the clergy, 13 people, witnessed when they opened up his relics, they were incorrupt. Even the clothing and vestments were fresh, but only in the corners where the rust came through the coffin was, spoiled, but otherwise, and he was uncorrupted. Would lift him, change him to the new vestment, and Vladika, holy God, he was holy, because we didn't know that, but this happened, God bless. Vladika knew, oh yeah, and Vladika, we like to first you learn the laws of God when we were little, that was in school taught, and you have to learn some prayer by heart. And Vladika, we always learn like Our Father or Holy God or or Царю Небесный, that Holy Spirit, and he would sit there and you would be very happy if you knew it, but if you didn't, he would also praise you because he knew each kid, each child by his ability, because some were weaker, and he still would smile with such a big, nice smile, I'll never forget. And who is real smart and can remember, they'll tell the creed of, I believe, and we would wonder, how did they remember all that? But Vladika was very kind to each of us. But then, of course, they took Saint John to Europe, because Brussels and Europe really was like getting very weak in faith, and they needed our Saint John more than us. So they took him to Brussels and France and Paris, and he was there for a while and helped them with the church to establish and to bring up the kids, cadet school, it was very important. Let's see. Yeah, Vladika would always walk when we was not in America, but in China, Shanghai. He always walked on foot. There was no buses at midnight when he finished his vespers or vigils, and he walked to the orphanage that was quite some miles, and he would check on us at night, and when we were little, we would thought, oh my goodness, I saw a ghost today, and but Vladika always had his staff, and it was teachers will turn off the lights at 7 or 8, whatever time, and you couldn't turn it on. So, and we were all scared, and we saw Vladika was blessing each one of us, and that's a special, yeah. I like that. Okay, what's this? Oh. He ate once a day. Once Vladika St. Tikhon, he had sold there. This was in America, that building they bought for 40 kids, but they just like birds flew away after we got older. But he stayed there, and some other people stayed there. But one time he saw a little pigeon, and couldn't fly. So he took it and looked at its wing and mended and something. And the pigeons started coming to him all the time on a little window. So he called pigeon Gula, because the pigeon dove would go, like a dove's dove. And he would sit on his shoulders. And when it was theophany, when blessing of water, Vladika would walk from orphanage, St. John, several blocks to 27th or 26th Avenue to Gary Street, where's Cathedral, and serve the bless the waters, and Gulya would sit on his shoulder or fly above him, that, he took care of the little bird so he could fly, and he would fly when Vladika is blessing the water and saying a lot of prayers. That little pigeon would fly way up to the sky and then boom on the shoulder. I was living in New York then, but Monk told me that he was present. He goes, I witnessed, and all the people just were so surprised to see that, how that little bird will go fly way up, So that was his little friend. But Vladika, one day he had to go to Seattle with the holy icon of Mother of God of Kazan, and he had to go there and serve liturgy. Vladika was tonsured when he was a young man, at about 30 or so, on the dead day of the Kazan icon. And then he was carrying that icon because that was like our mascot for all the refugees. Wherever we go, we take that icon. It was a miracle icon. And he took that icon with him to Seattle, because the holy icon, and a lot of people, refugees, also moved to Seattle because San Francisco was more expensive to live. So there was a lot of colony, and they built the St. Nicholas Cathedral. And so he came there, had the service, served in liturgy, and then went upstairs and he fell down. He had a heart attack, and his icon was right there. So he was tonsured on that icon, and he met our Lord on that icon. But before going to Seattle, Father Nectarios came after him and to drive him to Seattle. And he went to the car, but then he went back to church in St. Tikhon and took an icon of Apostle Jude and put it in a podium. It's a table where the icons in church. And when they looked up at the icon, nobody put it. Vladika put it, and then he left to Seattle. And he told somebody, I won't see you no more. He probably felt that maybe that was his day. And they looked it up, and he passed away on July 2nd, that was 1966. And it was the day of Apostle Jude. So Father, our blessed Vladika Saint John, knew the day that he was going to pass away. Or Gulya, the dog that he had, that day that he was away for a couple of days, they stayed in Seattle with the icon. Gulya lived in Saint John Orphanage. He was pacing down, back and forth, and flying like he never did. And he must have felt his little soul. And he's go by the cell of the Vladika. And he passed away after Vladika died. He didn't live long. He died. Anything else I probably forgot some, but this is Vladika was very special for us, for all us, hundreds of kids. I have a photograph and we all remember him. And when he was in church, and we saw bright light, and a lot of people saw that, and I mentioned that in a book here. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah. Okay. And Vladika always, whenever he comes to a cemetery, he likes to pray for cemetery who passed away, and he likes to visit the graves of, when he comes to Orthodox graves, you know, and that's what Vladika is. His all prayers for all of us, and still now we pray for him, and he is our blessing. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Did you do that?
Oh, here.
Greetings, my name is Gabriel. I'm Tamara's husband. There's some incidents that Tamara wrote about in her little book. Any of you have seen this book? It's Refugee in Saint John that Tamara wrote and illustrated. It's a book for kids. And then, but one interesting story is this picture on page 32. This is a almost life-size painting of Vladika John. It's almost life-size. I think it's a little bit small, but almost life-size. You see the cell in St. Tigan's. You can see it today if you visit St. Tigan's at 15th and Balboa, the corner, 15th and Balboa. So we wanted to get a photograph of this painting for this book here. So Tamara, myself, and Tamara's sister went to St. Tigan's cell to take a photograph of this painting. And we tried 3 times to take a photograph of this painting, and all 3 times the camera refused to work. So it didn't work. We stepped outside the cell to the hall. The camera worked beautifully. We couldn't understand what's going on here. It wouldn't work. We went back in into the cell, tried to take a picture. Still wouldn't work. Nothing wrong with the camera. Stepped out again. It worked fine. Finally, Tamara's sister said, she asked us, "Did you ask Vladika's permission?" We looked at each other. Well, we did. When the orphans were little, they had to ask his permission to enter the cell. Well, we didn't do that. So we asked his permission, and right away, bingo. Camera worked fine. We got the photograph. You see, I just see it right there. Oh, there you go.
Permission.
And there are other miracles that the orphans who are still very close today, all the orphans, very close-knit community. They're just like brothers and sisters because they've gone through so much through all those years, and they're scattered around the country. A lot of them are in the area here still. And they tell of different miracles that occurred through Saint John, and praying through Saint John. And some are like, I don't know if you've seen the photographs, like we all say, sometimes he's praying and you can see this low around his head. I don't know if any of you here have seen that. There's actual photographs that show that. There is an actual low going around St. John's head. And one time, one incident I can think of is when Tamara's sister, Lydia, was in the hospital, sitting at the bedside of someone she knew that was in a very serious condition, and the doctor said that person was, unconscious, and there was no hope for that person to survive much longer. So Tamara's sister would just sit like in a chair like this next to the bed, and she would just say, she tells you all this. She just said, "Oh, Vladika, please help this person." She didn't, nothing, you don't say anything fancy or flowery, just simple. "Vladika, please help this person." And all of a sudden, the buzzers and the monitors that are attached to the person all go haywire. People come running and say, "What'd you do?" My sister says, "What did I do? I did nothing. I just sitting here. I just prayed for this person." And then the doctors came and checked out that person who gained consciousness, and that person walked out of that hospital room within about 2 days, fully healed. This was a disease that was supposed to be terminal within hours. And there are a lot of little miracles too, like if you go to the cathedral in San Francisco now, you can see St. John there, his relics are there. And there's always, they always have oil, vials of oil, probably some of you already have, because I'm sure some of you have. And different people tell of different miracles that happen through praying to Saint John and using this oil. There are a couple at our church. We're from St. Herman's Church, St. Herman, Alaska, in Sunnyvale, California. And there's a young couple there that never could have children for whatever reason. They just could not have. They 10 years or more, and then finally they prayed to Saint John explicitly, and they did. They were able to have a son, and that son is now just been ordained a deacon, and he plans to become a priest. And then there was another young couple in our church over there who had two fine boys. They're both older boys in our church now, and one of them, when he was very little, they were born. They were very worried about him because he had a heart condition that was very serious. They applied St. John's oil and prayed to St. John, and that boy was healed. And then on lesser for myself, I can say I have a problem with my left foot here, because a long time ago I lost my joint there, and it got hurt so much I couldn't walk on this foot anymore. And doctors say, well, there's nothing left in that foot that you can put in there. We can't put joints or anything. All we can put is a steel rod or something in there, but it's going to hurt you all the time. So I said, being not too brave, I put the operation on my foot, kind of scared me. So instead I tried St. John's oil on that. And you put it on once a day, sign across over the spot in my foot. And as soon as I put that on, it was really, really interesting. It just felt warm, like, I couldn't believe this oil was from St. John's oil. It felt very warm and soothing, and the pain stopped her. And then I did that 3 days in a row. And here I'm still walking. I can play basketball on this. I walk on. I can jog on this foot. Never had an operation. Don't have any joint in there. So I thank John for that one. I'm not worthy of it, but maybe because I'm right next to this one here, one of St. John's children here. I gave benefit from this. And there's a lot of, and I hear all these stories coming from a lot of these other people that Tamara has known throughout her life and grown up in St. John. And it's just astounding. Like, if you could just, we're not good speakers, so we're probably not doing a good job of this.
Sorry.
But there are so many. If you could hear these people talk, you can understand that this is truly a saint of our times. And I think what it kind of shows that, like, we all read about books about saints and all saints like they are in the past or from long ago. Saint John was a person just all better than we are. But he was a person of our own times, and a person. He lived in our own times, and he wasn't extraordinary abilities, and that's debatable. I would say he does have extraordinary abilities, but he showed that just through living the Orthodox life and doing things. That's the key. You can't just say you're Orthodox. You can't just go to church on Sunday and pray. Orthodoxy is a way of life. You have to live it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And this is what St. John did. And through that, you can gain some bit of grace or sanctity, and it can lead you from there. And what he spent his whole life never thinking about himself. He was a doer, obviously, because wherever he goes, he established all these orphanages and all these churches. How about this little man? He's very little, right? About like tall like you, he's tall like you. Yeah, that one is very. And you think, where do you get all this energy? Because he never eats like you get these ascetics. They don't eat. He would survive on most times just on the sacraments. That's it. But he had that every day because he had that every day. He served services every day. But I just wanted to point out that he just was that fact that he did things for others every day of his life, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then as far as for the orphans, they'll all attest. I hear all the time that they just feel like there's such a tight bond with him, and he would, no matter where they were scattered, they always keep in touch. He always answered them. Like, we talked by phone or handwritten letters to each one of them, no matter where they were, never forgot them. And then you might have heard this some other things. A lot of times people call him up, and he would talk until all hours of the day. And sometimes he just like fall asleep there, and the phone is laying in his lap. But he's talking to people. He knows he's asleep. He still hears everything they say, and he carries on an intelligent conversation with these people all over the world. And he's just really a truly remarkable person. And then he was nothing stuck up about St. John. He's very approachable. He was like, you think, how do you talk to someone that's a saint? I don't know if I can do. But anyways, he's very approachable, very down to earth, and he just loves children. It says right here, and like sometimes people would just want to go out there, children, and to see movies. Of course, Saint John Maximovitch would only allow them to see proper movies. And so he would make sure that every movie that each one would see was a proper movie. If it was, that he would give them money to go to see the movie and perhaps get a little bite to eat after it. And he allows sometimes to have parties with music and dance. But never, ever was this allowed for on a Saturday night or nights before church holidays, because those nights everyone was supposed to be in church. I think that's all that Tamara is going to speak about today. I mean, maybe she would like to say, does anybody have any questions she'd like to ask? Would you like to ask her?
Thank you very much. I would like to make only one comment. It's very emotional that after such many years, the light of Saint John is passing to us through your memories, and it looks like you feel like a duty to spread around the beauty of his life, which actually turned out to be a light for all the people around. And this is very impressive, and I believe that from 40 people that you were at that time, probably everyone is doing what to do. Is that right?
Can we put some questions?
Sure.
Yeah. Dacă aveți întrebări, fraților.
Și este.
Da? Toată lumea a întrebat?
No. Nobody had a question.
Yeah, he has a question.
A true story?
It's a true story.
Of course.
It's all true. Experience
I
firsthand.
just touched
Not a
a
fairy tale.
little bit. If I could write better.
Thank you.
It's simple.
It's all true.
It's all true.
It's not fiction.
Yes.
I have a question. Can you tell us, I mean, I understand that Saint John was eating once a day. I understand that he was eating just a little bit. Things like how he was praying, you know, things what he's telling to us about his way of being, you know, way of praying, way of walking. I know he was walking without shoes. I know he was walking having
No, sandals mostly.
sandals.
They bought him because people felt, you know, that his bishop, and they buy him shoes, and he's walking, they were ashamed, like a little bit, you know, on a better cloth, and he will wear the shoes once and then give it to, when he exits the church, there's all poor people standing, or the drunks that have no shoes, winter, cold, he gives them his shoes.
He was doing that
socks.
very often?
And, yeah, very often. But he wore sandals. But you know, if you have to be presentable or for photographs or something, he had shoes. I never saw him all the life. None of us saw him barefooted. He had sandals always. So, but eating a little bit, it was a soup and a coffee or tea. That was once 11 o'clock. That was his meal. But during the fasting Lent, he just had water and prosphora, you know, prosphora, the bread.
40 days.
For a whole Lent.
For whole Lent.
For Lent. That was his meal.
Wow. What was his daily routine? I mean, he woke up what time in the morning, what he was doing?
Oh, he woke, well, I don't know the times, but early, before we knew he was already refreshed, cold water. He was a cadet in a military school he passed through. So he was really, he's very terrible.
Like when they're in the orphanage, he started his day would start before the break of dawn. He was constantly on the motion, doing all the things right. And then at 11 p.m. at night, 12 midnight, he's maybe even later than that. He's walking the halls. He's walking to each bed, the last and all. It's like, I mean, sleep is nothing. He doesn't think about sleep. How can you pray? How can you pray if you're sleeping? He's thinking, so he's just gonna pray till the cat keep his eyes open.
They find him at 9 in the morning sometimes, asleep on the floor because he's so tired with his body, but he didn't have
And he would do his correspondence from people around the world. Like I touched on a little bit about the phone as he's falling asleep while he's talking. They're 9 hours ahead of us and behind us over there, so it's be real late. We small hours, our people are in bed. He's doing the correspondence in his little cell.
Yeah, but he has a friend where in Argentina something trying to decide within his life something very important, and Vladimir in Brussels of Europe calling him, okay, go to sleep, but everything will be fine. and that happened because I prayed for Vladimir and I didn't know my job, this and that, and he calls him and says, okay, Vladimir, don't worry, I'm praying for you. And like people, when they're sick, and if he comes to hospitals, he's who is Orthodox, and come to them and pray to them and touch them and calm them. And people with this, I remember the story how Romans screamed, well, they can come to me, and the nurses say, oh, nobody can come, priests cannot come. Look at the weather there.
The sick people were many sick, and he always come to help them when he could, of course, And one time he came, and Orthodox a person that he prayed for, and next to Orthodox there was a Jewish woman that was screaming and crying, also sick, and he doesn't ask if you're Jewish, whatever. If you don't want it, of course, he will politely go step back. But he goes, Christ is risen, and she was very surprised. She was Jewish, but he always tried to visit the sick and people. Like one woman was really sick and couldn't get out or anything, and he prayed for her. And she says, yes, he was by my bed. I remember he was standing, and the nurse says, no, all the doors were shut and closed, and nobody could come. And apparently, he came, and he always gave her $20 because she was poor, and she says, oh, what about this? Under the pillow, there's $20. Isn't that the true story?
That's very nice. Thank you very much. If somebody has more questions, otherwise we'll stop.